If you've been diagnosed with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, this is what it sounds like to be a million miles away. Imagine being a million miles away. Tremfya Kuselkumab, taken by injection, is a prescription medicine for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who may benefit from taking injections or pills or phototherapy. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. In clinical trials, at least 70% of patients saw at least 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks. Results may vary. Tremfya is also indicated for adults with active psoriatic arthritis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Tap this ad to learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information.
Save more on the brands pros trust at Lowe's. Right now, get up to 35% off select major appliances and choose from our wide lineup of top brands. Plus, save $100 on a Little Giant 22-foot multi-position ladder built for strength, flexibility, and job site versatility. Pros, these savings will only be here for a limited time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 1/30 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowes.com for more details.
Hi, I'm Jill Sylvester, licensed mental health counselor and author of the self-help book, Trust Your Intuition, 100 Ways to Transform Anxiety and Depression for Stronger Mental Health. Because for me, it all comes down to listening to and trusting your own inner voice in order to live your very best life.
Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast. Today we're going to be talking with our trusted astrologer, Jill Jardine, about all things 2026, and I am very excited for 2026. So I want to start. Hi, Jill. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Hi, Jill. Thank you for having me back on Trust Your Intuition podcast. Nice to be here.
You are very welcome. So I don't know if you're as excited about 2026 as I am, but I want to hear about what you think about this whole, like, a lot of people say, like, I'm always grateful, right, for the year and all that, but I'm curious as to your summation of 2025 going into 2026, and obviously we'll dive into all the bullet points.
Yeah, so as most people have realized now, post 2025, that it was a huge year of purging and release.
Yeah,
which aligned with it being the year of the snake in Chinese Lunar New Year. It's going to be over on the Lunar New Year of February 17th, so we still have another month of it. But yeah, a lot of shedding, a lot of purging, a lot of feeling. Feel it to heal it. We had a predominance of water signs and more earth outer signs, and so it was the cleanup crew 2025, finishing incomplete business from the transit of Saturn through Pisces that went on about 3 years, Neptune through Pisces that went on 12 years, Uranus through Taurus that went on for 7 years. So we were doing a lot of finishing. That's why I was telling people, don't fret about what's happening in the world, because this is not new energy. That's old cycles playing themselves out. That's 25 and even early here into 2026. We see the old order playing out as the new is getting ready to blast in with a dominance of fire and air signs. So those people who have fire or air prominent in their chart, especially if they're born in the beginning of those signs, are in for kind of a really fresh jump start in 2026. But we will all feel it collectively. There's so much new energy pulsing into the planet, astrologically, cosmically, and galactically.
And this is the year of the horse. I've heard. I was going to ask you about that, your synopsis of the snake going into the horse, and I like the sound of that with the horse. It just feels very freeing, right? And take charge and some good energy. So I think that sounds good for our listeners, of shedding and releasing and getting ready to, as I heard you on your podcast, seed some intentions. So why don't you talk to us about what we're supposed to do in terms of getting ready and seeding those intentions for the coming year?
Yeah, so the good news is if you missed January 1st, 2026, no worries, because usually we like to see intentions at new moon. So the first new moon of 2026 is actually January 18th. But then we have the lunar New Year new moon on February 17th. The only problem with that, it's going to be an eclipse. So I would then tell people to wait until March to really get their groove on, because we will have an influx of planets in Aries at the vernal equinox, which is always the best time every year to see, because it's Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. But we're going to see some new energies coming in. It's interesting because the planets since November have been the inner planets have been going together. So by inner planets, I mean the Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, and then the moon will join them at the new moons every month. So we have a lot of planets kind of hanging tightly together in the first 3 months. So we're going to see, we are seeing it in early January with a cluster of Capricorn, which may feel a little heavy for some people, but it's about finishing unfinished business. Capricorn is the sign of karma. So a lot is coming up in the first 3 weeks of January. But then you and I are excited for the Aquarian influx, being Aquarians, because starting on the 17th of January, Sun will still be in Capricorn, but we got Venus entering Aquarius, and then the party starts, because we're going to have the new moon is on the 18th, but it's Capricorn, and then the moon goes into Aquarius on the 18th, then the Sun jumps into Aquarius on the 19th, and Mercury jumps into Aquarius on the 20th, and then Mars joins that cosmic party on the 23rd. So
wow.
For the last couple weeks of January, we're going to see a lot of Aquarian energy, which is, first of all, it can be rebellious, it can be revolutionary, it can be groups of people coming together. Aquarius is the group mind or the group consciousness as opposed to Leo, which is the leaders. So we are going to see a lot of rallying of group energies, maybe going against leadership. So it should be kind of wild to see what's being seeded. And then they're all joining Pluto, who's already there in early degrees Aquarius. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens at the end of January, and then that goes through early February as well. And then the last day of the Aquarius equinox is when the new moon's going to happen on the 17th. But like I said, it's an eclipse, and it's a solar eclipse. So that could be a cautionary tale. That's why I tell people it's not really good to seed or plant intentions at an eclipse, because they could get eclipsed, meaning that they're not going to come to fruition. So that will be kind of wild to see what shows up leading up to that eclipse, and then certainly a couple weeks after. And then the planets are all kind of jumping into, Pisces. There's another notable shift that's going to happen on the 3rd of February before the eclipse, and that's the planet Uranus, which rules Aquarius, is going direct after being retrograde for a few months. So February is probably the month of, people ask me, what is the month that's going to be wild? Well, it's always usually around the eclipse month, and this year it's February, and then early March we have the lunar eclipse on the 3rd, and that's Virgo, moon, Pisces, sun. So that's going to bring up something related to health and healing. So early on in the year, February will be sort of a wild month. Let's watch and see. It's also marked by a Mercury retrograde on the 26th. So there's something happening all month there. I mean, people ask me, what's the best month to travel? I chose personally not to travel in February because I feel there could be some kind of chaotic energy going on, actually. I mean, it's good for self-worth and self-work. I think it's really good because we're going to start getting clarity of what's happening. But the other thing about February, too, we're also going to have Saturn step into Aries for till 2028. Neptune has gone into Aries, or will go into Aries on the 26th of January. So we have those two outer planets changing. This is one of the big things that's happening in 2026 is they all stepped their foot in 2025 just for a few months, but now they're going direct. So it's a whole new, Aries being the first sign of the zodiac. We're starting a whole new chapter. So, people can get really clear about what they want to bring into their lives. And like I said, the third week of March will be a really important one because we'll have those outer planets joined by inner planets in Aries. So it'll be an Aries palooza for initiating new things. and people are interested in launching new businesses or whatever, that's probably the optimal time to do it this year.
So when you say February is going to be a crazy month or a wild month, let's translate that to the day-to-day, relationships, goals, work, health. Break that down. What can we do in the day-to-day?
I think people are going to have really good output in a personal and a day-to-day. I think people are going to get inspired because air is like the mental body or the higher mind. So people are going to maybe get downloads, is what we said. And whatever they didn't realize was in their way, that will come to the surface. There is going to be chaos externally, like in the collective out there. So, I mean, for your listeners, it's their inner work. I feel like people need to learn to be very internally referred. And we won't have a lot of Earth in the astrology during February, except for that Uranus leaving Taurus. So I would recommend that people, do their grounding work as well. Like go and, I know it's cold in the northern hemisphere, but trying to be outside, be very cognizant of your body, mind, emotional complex, and really self-care, because there could be a lot of distraction coming in from outside of ourselves, from the media, all the types of media. So that's why it's really important. I think we're being given this little heads up here in January because it could get, that's what I mean by chaotic, not necessarily, for individuals, but certainly in the collective field, there could be a disturbance.
I see. So if we're, more sensitively inclined, we'll say, then it would make sense to make sure we're grounding to protect ourselves from that kind of energy, which I would think that's already really happening. Right.
But more people, kind of rising up against, what's being perpetuated upon them. So people, no babies sitting in the corner. But again, people are going to find the groups that they align with. 2026 is a very interesting year, too, because, division and polarity was definitely fostered within the collective, certainly in the United States, but I know in other countries. Well, you're going to see the people, and I've been predicting this all along about regime changes. We're going to see around the world that certain leaders are going to be asked to step down, or, there'll be, governments being overthrown. It can be a little scary, but again, we're seeing a collapse of the old order, and the people are waking up. That's the beauty, and that's for February. That's a big wake up. I think we're going to have a lot of people awakening, to their purpose, their higher selves, to their creativity. Aquarius and Pisces are very, creative signs. So there's a lot of influx of light. We've gone through these years of like the shadow content coming to the surface collectively, but I think we start seeing infusions of light, and the future, Aquarius is the sign of the future. So we're going to get glimpses and inklings of our personal and collective futures.
And where would you suggest people go to harness that light, and how to harness that light during this time?
Well, because Aquarius is a focus on group, find your tribe, groups of like-minded people. I mean, I've been teaching myself, and you've been teaching workshops, I know, but I've just noticed in January here compared to the previous years, people are showing up for group activities, group workshops such as breath work or anything that can help them understand themselves better, whether it's a modality, experiential especially is very good at this time, or just being with people who vibe the same thing. I just taught an astrology workshop, and for early January, I had a really nice group show up. So that to me is a very good sign that people want to find out more. People are waking up, and they want to be empowered. And so anything that feels empowering to people, I say go for it. And especially if there's a group that is on the same wavelength, that's like when three or more gather in my name, we're going to see that amplified this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And trusting that, right? Trusting that impulse wherever someone feels inclined to go, and feeling like their heart is leading them that way for sure. So if that's February, then right here, right now, we're recording this as of the 13th of January. What can people do more of this month? What can they, expect in terms of the energy that's out there right now? What can we do today?
Well, I mean, what we're dealing with now is being stirred up. It's going to get stirred up. It's not going away. It's just there's going to be new components added to it. So again, do your self-care, take, and it can be exhausting for people. I mean, listening to some of this. So it's good to be aware, we can't be ostriches with our heads in the sand, but, a lot of people who are empathic or, sensitive can sometimes take this stuff on. And so it's really important to have good boundaries right now. And because the energy is sort of like blender is being in the blender with the collective, that, you've got to take care of yourself and not overextend, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to do something. And I mean, all the healer types I know, they'll have spurts of energy and okay, this is the time to do stuff. But then you have that time when you have to integrate. So we're going to go back and forth between action and integration in the next few months for sure.
Yeah, I think I want to talk more about boundaries actually, because I think for listeners, that is a big one, and honoring that again, that impulse, right? When we feel ready to just kind of, go inward. And then when we feel that more gregarious aspect of ourselves, to follow that and not to fret about it, but more to trust that when we're supposed to go out, we go out. When we're supposed to go in, we go in, and that there's nothing wrong with that there might be a system overload. So I wanted to have you talk about that astrologically, just for people that might be inclined to feel that way and feel like there's something wrong with them clinically,
Yeah, so the fact that we've got the two outer planets, Neptune and Saturn, going into fire is a more external sign. It's also very creative. So with the influx of this new energy, it may push people prematurely to, come out. But, the biggest thing is integration. Even, the most seasoned energy people are seeing that, whoa, one step at a time. Don't go on overload. Don't go on overwhelm. I mean, and there's all this other, if we want to get into the metaphysical, or I don't like the new agey stuff, but it's more like we are having energy, let's call them bursts, coming from the galactic field. So that too, we have to integrate those. So, the whole rest, and, there's been times in this early in January when I've heard from many people, they were all waking up at 3 a.m., so I think one of the best things that we can, sleep is really important. And if you are having an erratic sleep cycle, not to freak out, that, it's something that is being asked to be integrated, because then other people are telling me they're having the deepest sleeps with wild, healing dreams. So it's a gamut. We're going to run the gamut, and not to judge themselves. And, also January is bringing out it's January blues of depression. And so, that's energy that wants to be, come to the surface to see where there may have been a blockage or suppression or repression. And so it's all good. No judging of self, I think. It's almost like let's just see how things flow. And so this fire will help people, I think, in general, be more excited about things. And, again, there'll be a lot going on out there in the world, but find your own inner compass or GPS and let that guide you as far as, taking action or taking integration.
I love that. We'll be right back with a word from our trusted sponsor. Good Health Natural Foods in Hanover, Massachusetts is your one-stop shop for health food and supplements. They carry the largest selection of gluten-free foods on the South Shore, a wide variety of vegetarian and plant-based options, and only sell organic produce. Tired of searching the big box stores looking for options suitable for you and your family? Give Good Health Natural Foods in Hanover, Massachusetts a try. Okay, so talk to us. I don't think I've ever asked you on this podcast what you do when you feel overloaded, as someone who feels, right, and just works with the collective and all of that and does her own inner work on this personal development path. Tell us what you do when you start to feel overstimulated, when it's too much, and what it looks like when you're ready to come out. Like, give us a little personal insight into what you do, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, Jill. That like over the years, I've realized that like if I'm going to have like, let's say a splurge of clients and activity like workshops out there, that I need to balance it by having like a couple days of not having to do external interaction with people. So it's really, I think people need to look at their schedules to the extent that they can. And sometimes it's just the intention where I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to balance all that energy output that I'm going to do for those 4 days. So I'm going to take 2 days of just retreat or, just not, like sometimes I won't even, go out because I'm just rebooting and doing practices. I mean, my go-to practice is yogic in nature. It's Sanskrit mantra, breath work, and yoga, asana, yin, kundalini. But I also do quite a bit of outside. I need to get out into the fresh air, no matter how cold it is.
Definitely.
And then I combine some of the practices when I'm out walking. I'll chant mantra. And the reason I'm, such a big fan of mantra is because of, people think it's first of all, it's not, I have taught it, and I have a book that just came out as a way to calm the mind. It really helps with like whether you're having a negative mental pattern, or you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling like overwhelmed. My go-to is to chant a mantra, and if it's really feeling like stuck energy, I'll add movement to it, i.e. walking. So because that does shift energy, and sometimes, shifting energy is not doing anything, and I also seek out healing technologies. I'm a big fan of far infrared light, red light. There's a lot of light therapies and frequency therapies that are available now. And they are fantastic. So it's like you don't have to do anything. You just go and receive. And, of course, I have, my battalion of healers that I see. So that, it's self-care. But, like, again, I think what's going to be more important this year for everybody is that, like, if you're doing a real external outreach or you're really – that you have to balance it. You can't get it. I'm seeing people dropping left and right from adrenal burnout and other things from overextending this past year. So it's like the stakes are higher or something now. I feel like we have to really gauge what we can manage, and that, this is why, and you're seeing it too in your work, that a lot of people are changing careers because they really just can't put their body, mind through, those hoops. They can't jump those hoops anymore because it's affecting them a lot of times in mental and emotional health as well as physical health. So I think that we all have, I think this is part of the wake up that is happening for people, is that, not overextending, especially for something, that whole thing where money, is the motivator. I'm seeing a big shift with that people are valuing their value system, like my health is my first wealth. And so we're going to see that really strongly as we get through. So we talked about March, April, we have Uranus leaving Taurus and going into Gemini. So a lot of the people, there's a lot of people who are fearful financially of what's happening in the world and in our country. And with Uranus in Taurus for the last 7 years, I think it really has brought all that to the surface. But people are going to realize, too, that energy, their personal energy is a currency. That's why knowing, it's be like overspending money is overextending your energy.
Yeah.
If you're too withdrawn and too in retreat mode and not moving the energy, then that's like, okay, that there's not going to be any flow or income coming in. So it's that kind of thing. Even if you have plenty of money, it's still a form of stuckness if you're not moving your personal energy, no matter how much, you know what I mean? So we're going to see energy as a currency in 2026.
Oh, I like that. Energy is a currency. Yes. Okay. And, I also hear you saying balance, so if there was a word or a phrase that summed up 2026, what would you say? Is it energy as a currency? Is it balance? Is it more than that? What
I think
inspiration here?
I think it is related to keep your balance, stay in balance, because when there's a lot of external triggers or a lot of external activity, it's easy to fall out of balance. So, and the other thing people need to know is that balance can change too. That it's sort of, find your balance, I think would be a good, phrase for this year, find your balance.
Yeah. And for, younger people listening, I've just been listening to 20 somethings and them being concerned that like when they have to recharge, almost like there's something wrong if they don't feel like going out and doing the thing, that just saying like, wow, I really need time to regroup kind of a thing. I'm summarizing that from some guys and girls, but I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about. It's that whole thing of just like trusting the energy when you need to recharge, and just knowing that it just might be too much at the moment, and you just kind of step back and just take that time to regroup, but trusting, that there's, that's okay. Like you're reading that as a gauge for yourself to just go in, get what you need, come back out.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, especially for the younger generations, because they can, it may not be so much activity that's stimulating them, but it's the interaction with their technology. I think that taking technology fast is going to be really, really important this year, and we may be forced to do it. I also feel there could be some things happening. This is where my intuition and psychic abilities coming in, and we could have problems with the grids, the power grids, which would mean that the internet may not be up all the time, so and I see that more happening into the future, that there'll be interferences. I think we have relied on it for so long that we, because the keynote about 2026 is we're going to have some things happen that are unprecedented, that we've never had to deal with before. That's another thing. I'm not saying this to get people fearful, but, we're going to have to be very resilient as well. So balance and resilience. But for that, to get back to that thought, for the younger people to take breaks from social media and their technology and, start doing other things that are more inner referred, like reading and other things, books. So I think that we're, there is going to come a time when we're not going to have the accessibility that we do from, and I'm not going to say it's coming from, let's say it's simply like things like, solar flares or interferences of a natural order, like weather patterns or, so we've seen a little bit of this, but I think we'll see more. It's going to be fire and air. So that also, there's going to be a lot more fire and air disturbances of types like, with the geophysical and the geomagnetic. So we're going to, and as my guides have given it to me, it's happening in enclave. So we could be perfectly fine in Massachusetts, but then in other parts of the country, there could be, catastrophic things happening, as well as, Armageddon-like things happening. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I just feel like things will be happening, but wherever they're happening, it's for the groups of people to wake up, not in I don't mean this in a punitive way, but I mean to align with each other. Again, it's the group. The group energy is going to be a powerful force this year, and that's for healing or for, helping an area of the geographic location. It's going to be a lot of unification. We'll see more people unifying as opposed to the polarization. I mean, that will still be there. When Uranus goes into Gemini in late April, we'll see more of it. But there's also going to be a sense of people are living in totally different realities, that we're having what I call dimensional shifts.
Talk about that, because you mentioned that on your podcast that people can go and listen to about delusion and illusion. Talk briefly about that before we end.
Yeah, so Neptune has been in Pisces for 12 years, and I think that perpetuated a lot of collective illusions and delusions. So the good news is, with it coming into Aries, Neptune, where it will be for 12 years, starting on the 26th of January, I think the proof is in the pudding. People are going to be like, okay, I'm hearing this, but then I'm experiencing this. So, what is real to me? Am I going to buy into this, rhetoric, or am I going to buy into a narrative, or am I going to listen to my friend who's experiencing something firsthand, who actually is in the know? You know what I mean? So I think it's more for delusions. Illusions are popping as the like I like to call it, the proof is in the pudding. Like things that are real will be validated, and those that aren't will be like bubbles that are popping.
Yeah, and it's and trusting yourself once again along the way to really, it sounds like, to sharpen the saw with what you're talking about could potentially be on the path, you know, to get that work in order, kind of a thing, in an inspirational way, right? Not in a fearful way.
Yeah.
But in a way that's like, all right, you know, like just really getting yourself clear so that something comes up, like anything else, you know, you take care of yourself and you make that health your first currency, then you'll be fine, you know.
And your book, Trust Your Intuition, I think more than now, you know, your book and actually the podcast, I think this is the time when, you know, trust your intuition. It is what you share and what you preach, that like that people are going to realize that, like, when they're centered and when they do their practices, their intuition is the right GPS, not what they're hearing from a media or from some other source, that like what they feel and what their body shows them as the barometer of truth and falsism is actually legitimate. So I think people are going to realize that that's the cool thing about what's coming. People are going to develop skills and talents and abilities that they didn't realize that they had. I think we're going to see, you know, more intuitive people coming up, more people who are like very creative and have something to contribute to the world creatively. That's the beauty about fire. Fire is creative element, and then air is like wisdom or intelligence or intellect, intuition. We're going to see, and this is great for the younger groups too, because I feel like they've had so much distraction from society in the last 20 to 30 years that once you take away distraction, they're going to see that they have gifts and talents that are unique to them that they can share in the world whatever way they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just about being on TikTok or media, or it may not be media related, you know. I can't wait for this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And to go in and listen to that call of what it is personally for you that you need to get clear on, or what you can add, or what you can contribute. And, you know, for people who tend to get a little nervous about, like, you know, just like, oh, well, if something happens, you know, what can I do? You know, I think about, and I have been thinking about what I heard Pope Leo say, which is, you know, to challenge people to be humble, be responsible in their own practice, and how that contributes to peace in the world. And I thought that was such a nice thing to strategy, to keep it very simple, you know, when we get all kind of, you know, over empathic, right? And we feel like, you know, what can we control? I love that. Just stay humble, stay responsible, and that's how you contribute to peace, which is ultimately be the change you want to seek in the world, right? Do your own work is what you're saying, and then you can put that vibe out there regardless of what it looks like.
Yeah, be the change, be the peace you want to be in the world, for sure. This is the year of it. The other thing we're going to see coming out is, like, especially among the younger generations, is the healers. We're going to see a whole new wave of healers, whether they choose to go traditional medical model or alternative medical model. We're going to see a huge burgeoning of people who have innate healing gifts. I'm already seeing it in people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, even in their charts. I'm like, whoa. And then forget the youngsters who are younger than 20. They have access to a lot of special, what we call cities or gifts. So yeah, we're going to see a very huge transformation in healing, and not a moment too soon, right?
Yeah.
So the younger generations come with some healing energy intact. They just have to find the modality in which they should express it, or, you know, and they can explore that. So that's going to be exciting for the future. So that's a lot for young people to think about too. And you know, it can come out in many ways, you know, and they may be working with some of the new technologies of frequency and vibration for healing too that are on the planet now. So that's very exciting. There's going to be more with these planets in early degrees of Aries and Gemini, we're going to see a lot of new innovation and inventions coming that can be applied in a very positive way for humanity.
I like to hear that. That sounds empowering and exciting for people always to heed that call, regardless of any age. So, if somebody wants to get their chart done, go to you for a reading, which is always fun and educational to do, how do they reach out to you? And of course, there's Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine on the podcast, and I want to hear about your book. So how can people reach out to you, and then tell us how they can buy your book, and tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so for booking services, my website is JillJardineAstrology.com. That's JILLJARDINE, astrology.com, all one word. So all my services, and I, do things all over the world. So I can get up at 5 a.m. and do a reading for someone in Australia, which I do quite a bit. I have a lot of people in Australia, actually. They're very interesting, waking up, but all over. And then
we have quite a lot of people who listen from Australia to this podcast.
I know. Australia is lit up, all those Aussies out there. So anyway, and then my book, Sacred Sound Formulas to Awaken the Modern Mind, is about frequency, vibration, and the times that we're in, but I'm bringing in the ancient sacred sound formulas of Sanskrit mantra, which are basically sound healing, the yoga of sound, and it goes right along with people who use gongs or healing bowls. And so I share the mantras that I have been initiated in and I've shared to clients for the last 20 plus years. And so the book is, and they're broken into different categories, like chapters, like removing obstacles, for prosperity, for healing, for protection. So that book is on Amazon, Sacred Sound Formulas to Awaken the Modern Mind. And I had a co-author, my son, who's been doing this work for a while and has a PhD.
Oh, that's great.
So that was fun. And we have an oracle deck out to accompany it in February of 2026. Those are almost ready to be published, so people can keep an eye on that. And then, and please listen to my podcast, Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine, on the Believe Network. So lots of astrology and lots of great guests and, sharing a lot of information, news you can use during these times.
This is great. Great information. I hope people follow up with your book, your podcast, as I know many of my clients do, and they look at your website for more information. Well, we appreciate you being here today, Jill, as always, to enlighten us as we enter this exciting year of 2026, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jill, for having me on as a guest on your podcast, and best wishes for a successful 2026.
Excellent. Thank you, Jill, and thank you for listening.
If you like today's podcast, please hit subscribe and share with your people. And please check out my books and products at www.jillsylvester.com, where you can sign up for my weekly blog to receive tips and strategies to deepen your intuition and live your very best life. Thanks for listening.